Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell. Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Cornbread, and you're watching the
Break It Down
show. There it is.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, just for an intro for our viewers, Cornbread is in a band called Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, which true fans will recognize as a tune from the third ZZ Top album.
I believe you're
Tres
correct.
Hombres. Yeah, and it's a ZZ Top tribute band. You guys stay busy, so there's plenty of opportunity to see them, especially if you're in the Bay Area, especially if you're in the East Bay. Look at Maryland's calendar if you ever need to know where Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers are. And what you're going to find at one of those shows is a bunch of beer drinkers, a bunch of Hellraisers. So if that's your crowd, you know what you're in.
Come on down. That's right.
Come on down. Yeah, man. So, I now live in your former hometown. Where do you live nowadays?
So I'm out in beautiful Lathrop, California.
All right.
Right off of High-Five.
Yeah.
Makes it easy when we take these trips down to LA. You just jump on, boom, you're there. It's a beautiful thing.
That's the upside of living in Lathrop, huh? What?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, you can.
How long have you been there? I'm curious.
We moved out here in 2004. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Before that, I was out in Hayward. 95, I left Benicia. So that was 73 to 95. That was my Benicia days. And then I was reborn. Living in Hayward, what a culture shock that was. Let me tell you, boy, that was, I had no clue.
I want to talk about culture shock for a minute here because you and I go back a long way. You know, Benicia for me, 77 to 94, basically, so similar length of time. And I was young for my class, right? I graduated in 87, but I didn't turn 18 until like January of my freshman year in college.
Right.
And I was a little bit of a punk rock kid. And so my mom wanted to give me my haircut, like in the summer before school started. And I said, nope, I'm too big for haircuts from mom anymore. So I just cut my own damn hair. And it was bad, really bad. and so, I'm young, I got a bad haircut. And my first class is biology in the F Hall. And I walk in and there's this rock and roll guy with long hair, and even though I knew who Chris was, Chris Cornbread, even though I knew who he was, it's intimidating to walk into a class. And by the way, biology is normally a sophomore class when you're in high school. And so I, for whatever reason, impressed somebody with my shitty attitude and got in there early. And so it's like something out of a video in the 80s, man. Like I walk in and there's you and there's, all kinds of other people that are just way bigger, older, and more seasoned. I remember the biggest shock of the whole thing was when the bell for into class rang. You guys all just got up and left. And I'm like waiting dutifully like a middle schooler waiting to be released. It was such a thing, but you were so goddamn cool too, though. We would talk all the time. We had Mr. Kelly's class. And so I have very fond memories of those early days in high school. And you just were such a good dude and taught me a lot about music.
Right on, man. I appreciate that. It was fun times, man. Mr. Lewis, right?
That was Mr. Kelly that time.
Mr. Kelly, he actually lived down the street from me. I lived on Carlisle up in Southampton, and he was on Banbury, like right around the corner. So we knew each other like prior to me having his class. So I did not have that going for me. Let's just say that. That was not a positive. But yeah, good times, man.
What were you into musically right then?
So back then, Kiss obviously was that's the thing that started it off, right? I mean, and then I always
By the way,
about,
for everybody, we're talking about 1984-ish.
It's right. 83, 84. But yeah, Kiss had started it off for me. That just got in my craw, and I just knew what I wanted to do, right? So after that, I just seeked out as much cool music, as I could. And Iron Maiden was a big one back then, I remember. Ozzy, of course, Black Sabbath, all the stuff that kind of pissed your parents off, right? So that was and growing up in Benicia, Catholic family, I was like hide my records under the bed, so my mom wouldn't see them. I remember buying AC/DC's Highway to Hell right out of the gate, and
oh boy,
yeah, she I think she burnt that record actually.
I'm positive that went over well.
Oh my God, what is my son doing? And I think we started going to church like every other day, thinking that would help. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
but
also for those of us who were around that generation, just as a reminder, coming into that class, that was short weeks after the US Festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember listening to that.
Big time for music.
KRQR, right? I think they played the whole thing, and I sat there the whole time and just listened to it until the New Wave Day showed up, and then I'm like, I'm out of here.
You know what? I would normally have said that, but Missing Persons played that day.
Oh yeah,
they were for me the exception. That day rocked because of that. But yeah, that was a huge thing because music festivals now, they're all over the place, and you can go see your favorite bands and a bunch of other bands like your favorite bands. And even in our very, very local area, we have Bottle Rock a half hour away. So the concept of a music festival, though, that was kind of hadn't really taken shape, and the US Festival was big. So I remember when we were coming into school that year in particular, that was a big year to be into rock and roll.
Oh yeah. I remember all the concert shirts because my parents, once again, kind of a religious family, right? So it was like I really had to work my parents in order to go to my first concert. It was like they didn't want me going anywhere near any of that stuff. And I just remember the Day on the Greens and seeing all these shirts that everybody was going to, and I'm like, oh man, I missed that too, Van Halen, all these cool stuff. And then finally, I talked to my aunt. She talked her into it. Yeah, Iron Maiden's playing at the Cow Palace with Saxon. It's my first show.
You started off on Iron Maiden and Saxon?
Yeah, it's Iron Maiden, Saxon, and Fast Cow Palace. 1983, I believe. So yeah, that was amazing. But you mentioned festivals too. I don't know if you guys know this, or you bring up beer drinkers. But before that, I was in a band called Vicious Rumors, which was they were kind of a bigger band on Atlantic Records as far as a local band. And I got hooked up with those guys in 2000, and I found myself playing Wacken Festival, Bang Your Head with Full Force, all these European festivals, 72,000 people outdoors. We're playing with Judas Priest and just craziness, and it was amazing. Because I'd always had my eye on that, and it seemed like the minute I left Benicia, things started happening. So
wow. Vicious Rumors had been around a long time.
Absolutely. No, I'd actually seen them when I was in high school. Went to this place, the Calistoga Grape Jams, and they were playing out in the middle of a grape field in Calistoga. And I remember talking with the drummer. I thought he was a roadie. He had like Harley Davidson shirt on, just didn't look like your typical rock guy back then. And he's like, "Who are you here to see, man?" I was like, "Vicious Rumors." He's like, "Yeah, I play drums." I'm like, "No, you don't." You don't. Look at you. You're not the drummer. And sure enough, he was, and we became friends. And 95, I actually moved in with the guitar player, and that's kind of what started the whole thing. And eventually got in the band. Did that for 5 years. And,
Can we back up? And how did you get on the trombone? I mean, that's here's the other question too. What was the last band that featured a trombone solo?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably some ska band, I would have to imagine.
We just had this conversation. Yeah, Message to Rudy.
I always had the dream of taking a trombone and running it through like a distortion box and a wah-wah pedal, seeing what that was all about. You know what I mean? But how that actually came about was, we'll go way back to elementary school. You've got your PTA meeting where they've got all the instruments out there and the parents bring the kids down. And there I was, I'm standing in front of the alto sax and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. Look around, parents aren't anywhere to be found. They're down the road looking at the trombone because my dad played that instrument when he grew up. His grandfather played that instrument. So And I remember, it's just like, no, this is what I want to do right here. And my dad was like, son, your hands are much too small for the saxophone. Here's this really large, like, instrument, that you just need like super long arms and everything else, which I didn't have. So anyway, I was kind of forced into it and actually got pretty good at it. Not that I wanted to, but I mean, it was just one of those things. Maybe it was in the blood, right?
You were a legacy hire.
No, exactly. And what was funny? We'll go to Dalt Williams right here. He always hated me because he was a trombone player too, and I had an instrument that I left in the locker in the music room because I had two of them at the house. Right? Why bring the damn thing home when you've got two of them sitting at the house? So I left it there. He was under the impression I never rehearsed, I never practiced, I never played, and then I would show up and nail these parts, and he'd be like, "What's with this kid?" Yeah. So there was a moment where he pulled me into his little office, and it was like literally like the Breakfast Club. It was kind of like,
"What's with you, Bender?
You want to take a swing at me?" You know what I mean? It was like this computational thing, and I was just like, "What's going on?" And he was telling me like not to even bother. There was the honor band was doing tryouts, and I wanted to try out for that. And he was, so he pulled me in the office, and he was basically telling me what a POS I was and everything else. And I was just like, man, this, now I've got to do it. Right. I mean, just because he went up against me like that. And I ended up getting first chair. And I remember being in the room and they were announcing it, and they started like from the fifth chair and then they worked their way forward. So it's fifth, fourth, third. And I remember like second chair, he looked back, like smirked at me like, oh yeah. And then I got that first chair and it was like, oh, the ride home was beautiful.
Glorious.
So yeah, but eventually got kicked out of band. So I mean, that's he actually got the laugh there. But
no, I don't think so.
It's funny. Actually, another Dalt Williams story, real quick. My dad, who plays piano and sings, ended up doing a gig with him. And, I guess he played bass guitar or something like that. So they had a little 3-piece jazz thing going on. I think it was in Vallejo. And they kind of got into it a little bit. And my dad was like, my son was right about you. And he's like, who's your son? Yeah. And then he brought me up and he's like, oh, Jesus. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good story.
Yeah.
I almost feel like well, all right. Now that we've gone back there, I should give a little bit of backstory, because the thing is, your musical education went from trombone, which is a bass clef instrument, right? I'm a drummer. I don't know what clef anybody's in, but so eventually you started playing bass. Was that a natural transition? Were you always attracted to the bass? How did that happen?
Now, and there's a good story too, which is basically, guitar was my thing, right? Randy Rhoads was really my hero. Right. I remember the day he died. I remember we were I think it was a freshman. We were in PE. And somebody mentioned it. Man, the guitar player for Ozzy died. I was like, oh no. And that's kind of really where I, learned who he was and got really interested in him. And then turns out that he was just an avid classical guitar player. His practice etiquette was just like bar none, right? The guy was just, totally into his instrument. So obviously, being, a big fan, I wanted to kind of emulate what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So I was like, man, I got to take classical guitar lessons. So my parents got me a classical guitar, sent me to the Academy of Music out there in Vallejo.
Yeah. Who taught classical guitar out there?
There was a guy named Ed Trita. He was a Filipino guy who was really good. But he played more of like Spanish kind of guitar, right? Flamenco, that kind of thing. I was a little more interested in like Baroque, Bach, Paganini, that kind of thing. And but no, it was a great education going out there and doing that. But what happened was, playing classical guitar, you're using your fingers, right? So I kind of bypassed the whole pick thing altogether. And when it came time to start playing the leads and doing all that, this hand was retarded. It was like, oh, this one knew what to do, but this one, like holding a pick and doing all that, I'm like, man, this is not working for me. And I realized, these bands that I was digging, Rush, Iron Maiden, they had something in common, which is the bass player was off the chain.
Yeah.
And I was really like it. So I never really thought of it before, but I'm like, that might be the way to go. And you don't have another bass player in the band, right? So you're not competing for space, I'm going to play that lead. No, I'm going to play that lead, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the bass just worked out great. Took to it like a duck to water, the finger picking whole thing. And now I even play guitar with hands. I don't use a guitar pick at all. I just finger pick.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I see some nylon hanging back there.
That's kind of what happened. And then as well, the playing trombone, it kind of got me ready for the bass instrument because it was more of that realm of where you lived. You know what I mean? You weren't a kind of a lead playing the lead melody. You were playing these counter melodies and these things that were more related to the bass. So I would say, yeah, all that kind of helped me as far as really wrapping my head around it and running with that.
Finding a home in the arrangement.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I landed on the bass. Always played guitar, though. I kept the guitar. I mean, obviously, got a few guitars. That's my main instrument. I still play it. But as far as like commercially or anything like that, I didn't want to. I wanted to keep it for myself, like special, right? I mean, playing music, you express yourself. It's a way you get things out and everything else, and that's definitely true with me. And I just felt like if I commercialized it, if I made it something that was like a job, I was afraid that it wouldn't mean so much. So I just left the guitar as like my thing. It's like that's what keeps me happy. It's play it every day for a couple hours at least. And bass just became my working instrument, which worked out well too. So
yeah, that's
man.
pretty cool. I can't say we hear that kind of story very often. Like somebody's got a primary instrument he keeps to himself, and then
and I don't know what it is. It's just it means that much, right? I mean, it really does. When you sit there and you kind of lose yourself in the music, and you're expressing yourself. Maybe you had a bad day or whatever, and you get it out. And I mean, it's the best therapy anybody could ever have. And yeah, I was just afraid of losing that. So I just decided to just kind of keep in my own. Not that I don't go out and play every once in a while. In fact, a lot of people don't even know how to play guitar. And then when I pick one up and start jamming, they're like, dude, what's this? And I'm just like, oh yeah, it's something I do on the side, whatever. Yeah. But it's fun, especially when you get these cocky guitar players that kind of come out of the woodwork, and then you have to kind of line a little bit. Like, get me that thing. Let me show you. So, but it's it's all good.
That's a great day when somebody grabs somebody else's axe and goes, you know what? Let me show you how you play this correctly.
Well, when it's unexpected, you know what I mean? Especially sometimes bass players don't get all the respect they deserve, right? It's like, there's only 4 strings. How hard could it be, right?
Right.
Where it is, in fact, a very different instrument from guitar completely. I mean, you're living in a whole different realm, space. Your attitude toward what you're doing is different, right? You're laying it back, where guitar is more like attacking. Just a whole different feel thing to it. And I find a lot of guitar players that think the bass is just a lesser
support
guitar
instrument.
Yeah, they realize like they have no clue. And then you watch them pick it up, they got a pick. I'm like, okay, stop. What are you doing? So
well, as a drummer, sometimes you get into that situation where there's more guitar players in the room and you just want to jam, and one of the guitar players goes, yeah, I'll play the bass, and grabs the bass, and it's not the same.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then everybody's uncomfortable. It's like, give me my guitar back.
Yeah. But, and everybody's musical expression's a little different, but I think it's pretty cool that you have kept an instrument to yourself that you just kind of enjoy for your own pleasure at home, and then commercially you do something different.
Yeah. And it's worked, and the other thing is I've kind of taken I don't want to say a back seat, but I've decided like, okay, if I'm going to do this musical thing, I'm still going to be responsible. I got a job, you know what I mean? I do normal stuff. And I didn't want the pressure of just being the guy that does everything. I was more happy with like, you know what, I'll play the bass, support instrument, like you said, you know, and find some really good guys. And yeah, it just worked out that I had some great success with you know, I did the VR thing, and I got picked up with SpiralArms, who's Tim from Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. This was back 2004. And they had Eric Kretz from Stone Temple Pilots playing drums for him at the time. And I was thinking, like, what? I got to be involved in this. I mean, no way, you know, STP. Yeah. I remember getting in the room with him for the first time, and I just saw that drum set that was like from the Wicked Garden video, you know, that he was playing. I'm just like, I can't believe I'm sitting here right now doing this. Wow. So, yeah, just very, very fortunate to have hooked up with some really talented and cool cats that had the same vision, which was like, hey, let's make this happen.
I got to go back and talk about Dalt Williams first, because he kicks you out of band. I don't know what you got kicked out of band for. I do want to bring back a memory that at one point, this is in biology class, you were talking about a stunt you were going to pull off. You were going to wrap your body in tinfoil and fuel, light yourself on fire, and run around. And you were like, it'll work.
That sounds like one of my ideas, actually. Yeah.
No, it was. And tinfoil.
That's the hell raising part of beer drinking and hell raising.
Yeah. So
I never followed through with that one, though. Actually,
yeah, thankfully, yeah. Well, you were also going to jump off of something. And, you know, it was Evel Knievel was still sort of relevant, and for sure in our youth, you know, like we wanted to be on fire and jump off of things. But what I wanted to get back with Dalt is, have you guys over the years? I mean, look, ultimately he's done his job, right? Here you are. You're in music. He has an impact on what you do. In some part, you have a lot of other lessons and influences. But have you guys ever managed to patch up that relationship, or are you guys like never really going to get along?
Nah, you know, I honestly didn't have the opportunity to do that, right?
Okay.
I did. Now I'll say this story, which was there's a guy plays drums. I don't remember the name of his band offhand, but he lives out in Vegas, and every time we would travel through, we'd end up staying at his house. And it turned out that he's best friends with Dalt Williams' son. So wow. I think I was in the middle of telling one of the stories how I got kicked out of the band and whatever, and he brings it. He's all, wait a minute. He's all, Dalt Williams, Benicia High? I'm like, yeah. Because, dude, he's like my best friend is his son, you know? So he ended up telling him the story, which he completely laughed, right? He's like, that sounds right. But yeah, just never had an opportunity to do that. I mean, if anything, he motivated me to take it to the next level. It's like, oh yeah, watch this. You know what I mean? And that was kind of because I'm that way, right? You tell me can't do it, I'm definitely going to do it, you know, however long it takes.
I'm sure he did that on purpose. He had those intentions for you, and he knew you could do it.
Well,
so he fell on the sword.
To be completely honest, man, I wasn't the easiest cat to get along with, you know, as far as, you know, the authority figure and the rebel kind of scenario. That was definitely me. Class clown. I mean, whatever you want to call it. It was, you know, especially
if you're a mid-40s high school music teacher.
That's right. With a beard like that. I mean, that was, you know, Willie Weirdbeard, we call him. I don't know if you remember that, but that was the name we had him. And that was part of what got me in trouble. We had some guys in band class that had made like a flyer and just wrote a bunch of crazy stuff on it. And I came into class, I looked at it, I go, oh, he's got to see this. So I walked up to the podium, set it on there. And he comes in, they're looking at it. And it's just like the WHWC, We Hate Willie Committee, like big thing, right? So it turned out that, they thought it was I don't know if you remember, there was a football player that we went to high school with, Willie. And they thought I was talking about him or whoever made this flyer, which wasn't me. I just put it up there. So anyway, the cops were called. It was like this big thing, terrorist threats and everything. Actually, 2 people got expelled because of that.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they just kicked me out of band because all I did was put it up there. But it was hilarious, man. They thought we were in some gang. Why do you wear black all the time? I'm like,
I'm in the gang of rock and roll.
Because that's when you just do this. Because you know, that story went out of control fast. Wow.
Yeah. No, it did, man. It was nuts. And then it turned out, yeah, they thought, Willie was a black guy. So they thought it was like this racial thing. And we're like, dude, Willie, weird. It's Mr. Williams. What are you talking about? So it just became, yeah. And I remember the day I was in algebra and, how they had the class kind of announcements.
Yeah.
Today we'll be having the Pronto Pup with the tater tots.
The Pronto Pup.
And then at the very end, it'd be like, and Will, and there was a list of people that had to come to the office, right? I was just like, top of the list, oh man, please go to the dean's office. So I remember showing up, and yeah, there's cops there, and it was just like this big thing, and they were keeping it real cryptic and not really like why am I here? I had no clue. And then they bring up that flyer, and I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then yeah, it was just. And the cops rolled their eyes, like, "Oh, we're out of here," So it was really kind of a funny thing. They thought they had me.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
Teflon cornbread never gets caught.
did. And then
That's
I ended
right.
up in home ec, man, with all the girls. I mean, it actually
Nice.
It's a win.
win-win. Believe me.
Yeah.
Wow. They just threw the fox in the hen house.
Yeah, good times, man.
John
Yeah.
was talking about back in the olden days, he was aware of your presence, because you guys are all musicians and stuff. And he said you were too damn pretty to be in a rock band. And you were gonna get
That's
all
not
the
what I
girls.
said. What I said was you're. Oh wow.
Nothing
No,
pretty
the
about
thing-
that, man, let me tell you.
Okay, so to rewind, we're a year younger than you. So there were guys that we knew were already rock stars. And I would say it was like mostly Phil Deckard. We knew he was a rock star. Pappenberg too. We knew he was a rock star.
Phil, man, I don't know if you remember when Phil worked down at Rainbow Records in Vallejo there, man.
Yeah, of course.
I bought I remember, some of my first albums, Diary of a Madman, I bought from Phil, and just,
Yeah.
Paranoid, Black Sabbath. So yeah, Phil and I still good friends. He obviously went on to do Cry Wolf and had a pretty good success at doing that. And and then we actually talk on Facebook every once in a while too. So good name. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also an alum of the show. We've reconnected with Phil, and we sat with him last. I don't know, it was a long time ago now, but there were just guys whose presence we were aware of, and then there were the guys where you go, man, that guy's a really good bass player. But I don't know if you know this, but I'll divulge to you. There were a lot of us who thought, yeah, man, that dude's a really good bass player. He's freaking too good looking. He's going to be he could be in a band like Maiden, but there's too many chicks chasing around bands like Poison. So he'll probably be in that band. And so as an outsider, because I didn't grow up with you in Benicia, but
Yeah.
for the musicians in Vallejo, that's what we thought of you.
Oh man, I'm too pretty. That's the first time I've heard that. So
We were spiteful because we were like, what are we going to do when this guy shows up? All the chicks are, nobody's going to be interested in us. So it did. What was it? Was it like that with you? When did you first get signed? Because we all thought you were already a rock star.
Oh man. So actually in high school, I was playing, and I'll bring up another guy, a Vallejo guy, guy named Dave Saker. I don't know if
Oh man, Dave passed away recently.
I do know Dave passed away. I'm so sad about that because
Yeah.
he actually got me in my first band.
Okay. This
what
gets
the deal
good.
was-
I worked at Discount Music, by the way.
Discount Music. So he worked at Discount Music too, right? And
Yeah,
I used to go down there, stare in the window, look at all the guitars on the walls, like, oh, one day, right?
of course.
And so I actually went down there with an electric guitar, and I was going to trade it for a bass. It was the time that I decided, like, okay, I'm making the stop. And what's hilarious is Phil Deckard was actually at the store with Dave, and he was down there. I'm sitting there playing the bass, checking it out. I had a Les Paul, and I wanted to trade it for this old 70s P bass. And they were grinding me, trying to get more money and everything else. And I was, I'm like, never mind. So I'm walking down the street. Dave comes running out. He's like, wait. So ends up doing the deal. And then while I'm paying for it, he goes, hey, I know some guys that are looking for a bass player right now. maybe you want to try out for it. And what I didn't know was it was a goof. It's his old band. And he was sending them some like brand new kid that just got a bass, you know what I mean? And so he's messing with them. I end up getting the gig.
Yes.
So I'm in high school. I'm playing with these guys that are like 30 years old. They're talking about going to Winterland, seeing Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. I'm like, damn,
Jeez. Wow.
Just, I'm still in high school. So I actually was, I was playing with some cats that were really good.
What band was that?
It was called X. XE. Yeah, they were on the, I don't know if you remember the US metal albums. A guy named Mike Varney.
Mike Varney, yeah, Metal Blade.
Yeah, he started his whole thing by putting out these compilation records of these Bay Area guys, really is what it was, guitar players that were ripping, and put it out as called US metal. On the front was like everybody had like a guitar that was like shooting bullets, and just everybody was at war. And it was funny because our guitar player was like a pacifist, so he couldn't be holding anything like weapon or anything like that. So they had him just like shooting up in the sky. Everybody else was like stabbing people with bayonets and everything on the album cover. They had him just like shooting up in the air. But so they had a song on that first record. And I got in the band shortly thereafter, and I started playing with those guys. I did it for like 3 years.
Pete,
you
see why we were all jealous of Chris?
No, man.
Yeah. Anyway.
And but yeah, those were fun times, man. Dave Saker, like I said, instrumental in getting me, like I said, my first band. I used to go kind of roadie for him in his old band, Ace Diamond, from way back.
Ace Diamond. Yeah.
So we go follow them around, they play these bowling alleys and everything else. We help carry the gear and sell the t-shirts, and it was fun, man. And yeah, I looked up to him,
Likewise, he was great. He was just one of those guys who was sort of a godfather for the young guys. He always was, nice to me and was always cool. And then I'd, go watch those rehearsals. They had the big room upstairs.
That's right.
Back there. Right. And Anthony Rizzo on the drums, man. He had this enormous drum set. I mean, those guys were, we really thought they were rock stars back then. And, they kind of cut the path for the rest of us who were just trying to figure a bunch of stuff out. They were writing actual songs, and, he was a really nice dude, and he died very recently. So.
Yeah, I know. And, I had a chance to actually see him a few years ago. We did a show together. So, and he was already kind of in a decline, but at least had a chance to connect and just let him know, like, hey, man, I appreciate you and everything you've done for me. And, pat on the back. Yeah, really good.
Back in the Rainbow Records, Castle, all those different stores, Tower, these were like cultural magnet places where we all went and we all learned about other music. And I remember like when Tower in Concord off to the far left had like a section where it was like concert shirts and banners and all kinds of stuff. And it was almost like scary for a little kid. You're like, that's because, like the whole Satan worshiping devil, Knights in the Satan service and, all these different like devil music kind of things were really a thing back then. Do you remember that lawsuit with the shotgun? I forget what band it was. I've been Ozzy. But they had a shotgun on the cover, and some kid had killed himself, unfortunately. And the mom's like, this music made him do it. It was a crazy era. And we had Tower and all these other areas where like you could find your friend that you didn't know by just being in this section where Ozzy was. Or, if you like Genesis and you're standing around that section looking at Genesis albums or whatever, you could find a kinship with someone from a completely different town.
Oh, absolutely, man. There was actually a place at the Sun Valley Mall right next to Macy's called Dynasty House, right? And it was just an import store, had weird, just wicker baskets and all this other stuff, candles. But then you go to the back and they had all the bootleg shirts, bootleg concert cassettes, right? Like Ozzy with Randy Rhoads live, which is something you couldn't even find back then. I'm just like, holy smokes, what's this? So we used to go hang out at that place. There was a guy, Vic, in the back that we became friends with, and he was an artist. drew a lot of stuff. Ended up drawing me a portrait of Randy Rhoads for my birthday, kind of thing. But yeah, man, I mean, those were the things. I mean, there was nowhere else to go, right? I mean, you know, Rasputin Records, you go hang out there, flip through all the albums. You know, that's where I first heard of all, you know, Metallica and Anthrax and, you know, all these bands. And you would only go off the album cover. You wouldn't know. You're like, okay, is this something I want to get into or not? Right. I remember it was between, I want to say Metallica and a Toto record for all things, right? It was Toto Hydra. And it had like a sword and a dragon on the front, I think. And I was just like, I went with the Toto record. And boy, was I disappointed. I got
that's painful.
Not as heavy as I thought it might be. So
yeah.
You
know, I mean, as much as I love Toto now, I think that would have been a huge disappointment right then.
Oh yeah. That was, you know, there was
a couple Toto, or you could pick Ted. Look at that.
Right.
Oh yeah.
I had that on 8-track. I had that one on 8-track. So.
Nice.
Yeah, that we won't even get into how you had an 8-track player. You should be in the generation one removed from 8-track players.
I think I was right there, man. I mean, early on, it's just like I said, I was 7 years old rocking the Kiss. And I remember my first record I ever bought was Dressed to Kill, right when it had come out. I was on, my parents sent me away for like the summer with my cousins.
Oh boy.
And went up to Washington. Yeah. And their parents were real kind of, you know, they didn't care. So yeah, I'm buying Kiss records and everything, hiding them in my luggage coming home so, you know, the parents would see it and all that. Which was probably another, I mean, you got to think about it. That might be another reason why I was so interested in it, is because they were trying to hold it back from me, you know?
Yeah, you had to work hard. You had to smuggle your rock and roll experience.
That's right.
Dude, I'm telling you,
rock and roll.
Hide the records, and my mom would go look for them, and she'd find them, and then I'd be like, oh man, and you know, have to start the collection all over. So
yeah, like I had to mow 2 lawns to get that record.
That's right.
I think I was this many years old when I realized my friend's parents who told us the John Denver Greatest Hits 8-track was stuck in the player. I just now realized I think they were lying to us. Like, because they would always just play it on a play like Grandma's Featherbed. We like that song. They'd play it again. You would never get access to the other stuff that they had in the 8-tracks in the car.
Exactly. Joan Baez. You know,
yeah. Yep. I want to talk about ZZ Top and Beer Drinkers and Hell Raisers.
Absolutely.
Now, you're a fan of things like Rush and look, Iron Maiden. And I love Iron Maiden. Hopefully we're going to have Bruce on the show here in the next week or two.
Nice.
This is completely different in terms of like showmanship and the lyrics. I mean, and I love ZZ Top, but they're going to go to LaGrange and get laid, you know? Meanwhile, Bruce is doing other stuff. Bruce has got a sword and he's doing all kinds of shit. How do you balance these existences of like this young guy that likes, you know, Paganini and all these other things with just hard, like dirt in the floor, peanuts in the floor, long neck beard, you know, ZZ Top awesome music.
So how this even came about was obviously the beard started coming in, right? So I was growing the beard. I was playing in SpiralArms.
And not the Dalt Williams, by the way. Anyway.
Yes. Not like
better beard.
I had to shave the mustache for that. But yeah, I was playing in SpiralArms, and our guitarist Craig Cicero from Forbidden, he was our guitar player, and he had a friend played guitar. He wanted to play some ZZ Top for his buddy's birthday party. It was like his 50th birthday, and his favorite band on the planet was ZZ Top. So he ended up calling Craig and saying, hey, ask your bass player if he's still got that beard. You know, he goes, he's got it. He's like, man, I want to do some ZZ Top for a buddy of mine out in the city. It's kind of a one-off thing. So learned some material, did the ZZ Top. And getting into the material, you know, I was familiar with ZZ Top, right? I mean, obviously Legs and all the stuff, you know, LaGrange and Tush. But that was about it, right? I mean, I had never did a deep dive on them until I started playing the music, and I just realized, like, man, these guys are cool.
This is legit.
Yeah, seriously. And you know, there was also the Cliff Amal video with Cliff Burton, where they were being interviewed. It was Dave Mustaine and, you know, the old version of the band. And they were being asked, what are you listening to nowadays? And like Mustaine chimes in, Angel Witch and, you know, the Rods. And he's like naming off all these bands. And you look at Cliff's face, the disgust. And he's like, no, man, Led Zeppelin. You know, he starts naming off all these bands, Sabbath, ZZ Top, right? That was like the last band that he even mentioned. And it always stuck with me, like, ZZ Top, really? I always kind of looked at them as more of a, you know, a old dude's band or whatever. And then I guess
and they were kind of gimmicky because they had the car and the videos and, you know, the guitar with the fur around them and stuff. But
right, the whole MTV era of what they were doing. And so,
if you're a few years older than us, you may have a chance, especially if you live in Texas, at realizing that ZZ Top made it because they kicked a lot of ass. They just kicked ass, and they would grind out just show after show on the road, and they got a million fans one at a time.
Right. No, you're right about that. I mean, I watched that documentary that they had on Netflix or whatever, and really,
that's really good.
How, you know, of a gradual climb their success was. It wasn't an overnight thing at all for them. That they were playing, you know, the clubs and grinding it out. Just stayed in Texas, and they broke away into Oklahoma and started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But you know, it was doing that gig. And I don't know, 6 months passed, and the same cat called me back. He goes, hey, you remember that ZZ Top stuff still? I'm like, yeah, man. He goes, well, I've got another gig, but we need a drummer. I'm like, okay. So Tim, who is now our Billy Gibbons in Beer Drinkers, he also plays drums. And I hit him up. I go, hey, man, you want to play some ZZ Top? Play some drums? He was like, hell yeah, I do. So we started doing that little thing, and that lasted, I don't know, like 6 months, playing shows. Guitar player that we were working with just wasn't as interested as we were, because we were starting to see an opportunity to make some money. We're like, man, people are willing to pay to see this, you know, this. Yeah. Whereas like we're playing the original music, and you'd be lucky if you got $25 for gas. You know what I mean? It was like, so getting paid to play music was a whole new concept. We're like, I can't even believe it. So we ended up pursuing it. And, you know, when it came time to the other guitar player kind of bowed out, and I went to Tim, I go, well, you got to learn the guitar parts, man. We got to keep this thing going. So that's what we did. This was like 11 years ago. And then now we're, wow. We're books.
In my head, Tim said, oh, I know the guitar parts. And
well, no, he was actually little. I mean, that's a big, I don't know if you know, but I mean, Billy Gibbons is
monster.
An MF, man. Yeah. That dude could play. So yeah, it wasn't like something that he thought would be an easy task. He was actually really challenged by it. He was like, wow. He goes, okay. And then he went in both feet. And he plays notes for note. I mean, all the little nuances and everything, it's all there. So, and so that's when we started doing it. And our first show, Jason Newsted opened up for us in Concord.
You gotta be kidding.
It's called Time Out. No, and we had the show already booked, and we didn't have an opening band. It was just going to be us. And then we got a call from a friend of ours who knows Jason very well. He was like his personal assistant back in Metallica. He goes, hey, man, Jason wants to open up your show in Concord next Saturday. We're like, what?
Yeah. You got to be kidding me.
Uh-huh. So, and then it happened. I remember that was the first time. I actually met him before that. But the first time I really got to kind of meet him and hang out with him.
And so this was Jason Newsted solo material. He just wanted to work it out.
Right. It was Papa Wheeling. So it was that band. It was that band. And I guess he'd been working on some new material and wanted to get out and just kind of, do it. He was living in Walnut Creek. So it was, just a hop, skip, and jump for him to go do this. And he shows up. And I just remember I was I was so surprised at how small he was, and I guess that's true with a lot of rock stars, people that you look up to and, seen on stage, and then you get them in front of you and you're like, dude, you're a little guy, you don't realize it. So I was like, man, he really needs to eat like a ham sandwich or something, man. He looks real kind of thin. And, I think I even mentioned that. I go, you need to eat something, dude.
Let's get you a sandwich.
And but no, that was our first show. So and then from there we just kept booking and just playing bigger and bigger places. And now we're
totally busy as you want to be.
Yeah, we've got some big shows coming up. We're headlining the Street Vibrations in Reno, the big motorcycle rally out there.
That's a big show.
That is a big show. We got another motorcycle rally down in Bulkhead, Arizona, I believe. That's coming up. I got some dates here. April 29th, we're going to be down there. So, we are booked packed. So, we do that to make dough, and then it enables us to do the other thing, which is, the Watchers right now.
Watchers, yeah, that's your main band. I want to say this, too, about ZZ Top and what an awesome band they are. 83 words in the song Tush, and we all know what the point of that song is. Where Iron Maiden, they're off running in the hills. That's 200 words. It's a totally different vibe. You guys are just getting down to it, and God bless those guys for just keeping it simple and keeping it right on the money for a hell-raising kind of band. That's got to be a big part of the fun part of the gig, is the people that are going to a biker rally. They're here to fucking party and have fun.
Yeah.
Well, no, they somehow took the blues and made it party music, right? Because I can't really point to anyone else that does what ZZ Top did. And that's what was so cool about that band as well, to, decide to kind of pursue this as a thing, is that they were so unique. It was like, there's nobody like them, they're just, the beard thing, the music. They just evoke this good time feeling, like, hey, let's party, man. And that was appealing. And it really translates when you go out there and you start playing in front of a bunch of folks at a bar and they're looking to have a good time. There's no other way to do it than, pop some ZZ Top off. And you got people out there, oh, pearl necklace. Yeah. So it really does. And then the other thing was that I didn't realize that, Tim and I have this chemistry. And it was natural when we were in Spiral. I played in many bands with Tim. White Witch Canyon was another project that we did, put a record out, which was funny. That band, the philosophy was the harder we make our music to get, the better. So we only released it on a limited edition vinyl. You couldn't get it digitally. You couldn't get it any way else. And, at the time, it was like, why don't people know who we are? Right. That's where we're scratching our head. But now it's like people are coming back. They found the record and it's become this thing. And they're like, man, White Witch Canyon, you guys got to do that again. So it actually kind of paid off and doing that. But yeah, we had this chemistry together, and doing the ZZ Top thing, it really did kind of show that as well, which was, we, just like Dusty and Billy had that chemistry. It's hard to find somebody that really you relate with in that way. And, Tim and I can't tell you how many people, including his mom, have mistaken me for him and vice versa, right? His own mom coming in a club and she's waving at me like, hi, Tim. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? And, later on, obviously it's like, oh, wait, you're not Tim. But, so this chemistry that we had, really, doing the ZZ Top thing, it really kind of made it evident that we got something special. And
I don't want to make light of the fact that ZZ Top, look, they make fun music and it's it's a happy good time and all that stuff. It's good for beer drinking and hell raising, but every person in that band is a monster of a musician, and they really had this way of making approachable music. But when you dig into it, especially if you dig into it to play it, you go, holy cow, this is real challenging stuff. And so
that's, they're right out of the gate, everybody's got to do their part. There's no hiding behind the other guitar player guy. I'll just turn down during this part because I don't know. No. Everybody's right out front, right? So, I mean, you've got to really kind of command what you're doing. And, you know, the other thing was I didn't realize how close Dusty and I, you know, as far as playing wise goes. I mean, I play his stuff and I'm like, I would have done that. That's what I would have done. So, yeah, through discovery, you just sort of like, wow, this is more, I have more in common with this than I ever thought.
Yeah. So his passing, I imagine, hit you pretty hard.
Oh, man. You know, it's a trip because, you know, you play him on TV, right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how people think of you until like people started messaging me, you know, during the day when he had passed and said, man, I'm thinking about you right now. And I'm just like, what? But yeah, I guess, you know, I am representing him. And yeah, it was heavy, man. It makes you think about your own mortality and everything else. You're just like, man, we're here for a very finite amount of time. So
yeah, I mean, especially because you're playing parts that he wrote, but you're playing them and you feel them, you know, in a way that was similar to what he did. I mean, like you said, he's making choices that would have been the choices that you made, and you know, kind of he really paved a way for you to express on your own instrument, and it really does make a connection where you have to kind of think about, you know, where you are in relation to, you know, your life and his passing and questioning your own mortality and all that. When you look at ZZ Top now, how do you feel about the new guy, Eli? What's his name? Have you seen him at all?
Eli. I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember his name. I think Elwood.
Elwood. Right.
You know, at first, I want to say I was offended, but I was just thinking like, man, that it's a sacred temple, you know, and it should be treated as such. But what I didn't realize was that this was Dusty's request. You know, he knew that he was, you know, his time was limited. So he made it clear that he did not want the band to stop playing. He didn't want them to miss a beat, and that this is the guy that's going to take my place.
Wow, his handpicked successor.
That's what I'm saying, you know, and you know, obviously Elwood had been with the band for, you know, decade, guitar tech and everything else for Billy and Dusty. So, I mean, you think about the family relationship that, you know, these guys on the road get, you know, night after night after night. You can't duplicate that, you know, because people were mentioning like, dude, you should have that gig. I'm like, no, don't even say that. I'm waiting for the lightning bolt to hit me in the head, you know, from you even mentioning that.
But this is where we're at now. Like at our age and the bands that we loved. I mean, Willie Nelson's lost Paul. He's lost his sister Bobby, you know, but they're still going to be on the road because they're going to just tour until there's no one left to tour. And that group will probably still go on and play because they are this family. And you're like a distant cousin, you know, cousin Chris, cousin Cornbread. But it is pretty cool to be able to do that. And by the way, I want to make sure shout outs to Lisha and then Ho-Ho, who definitely jumped in here and said, what's up? And Benicia folks, we got
he's in Houston now. Yeah.
But let's talk about the Watchers before we run out of time, because that's the other project.
Watcher. In fact, I brought a couple items to show you.
Yeah.
So this was our first EP that we put out. 2000. I even wrote it down because I don't remember. 2016. We put this one out. We got in the room like twice, wrote this material, and then recorded it. Done. So it was kind of, we wanted to get lightning in a bottle. The lightning right there. And we did. And it was just one of those things. Either it was going to work or it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it worked. And people were like tripping on it. They're like, dude, that EP, give me a break. And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, 2 rehearsals and we went in the studio. That was just great.
How about the cover art? Who did the cover art on that?
So this was Ging, a good friend of ours, lives on the East Coast. And let me tell you how this came about. So Sabbath Highway, it was already decided, right? Because it was basically, we're all traveling down the same road. which Black Sabbath paved for all of us, right? So that's kind of where we're tipping our hat to those guys. But the record came back and none of this was on here. It was just like regular blue sky, no church in the background hit by lightning. It was just a road. And it looked like Nickelback's album, right? And I'm just like, dude, we can't do that. And I think, Tim had called me and he was like, he showed me the art. He sent it over to me. And I go, man, you got to make the blood red sky and like put a church in the background. So I just started naming all this crap off. And then they literally just took it and put it on the record. He goes, what do you think of that? And I'm like, awesome.
Yes.
That's the list. Also, you can't have some 12-year-old kid buying a Toto album.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, you don't want to disappoint him for the rest of his life. And then, so that gave birth to this record right here, which is our full length. Love this record. And one of the reasons we got to work with Max Norman, who he produced the Ozzy Osbourne records with Randy Rhoads.
Oh, wow.
He did the Bark at the Moon album, Megadeth's big record that they had. I mean, and when I was working with Vicious Rumors, we actually reached out to him to possibly work with him with that band. And he wanted like 20 grand just to be in the room and not even to give, so we were like, that's not in our budget. So we ended up not working with him. And then the Watchers, I think Tim had seen him on Facebook. He was like, Max Norman. Huh. So he just sent him an email, love what you do and everything else. We have this band, if you'd like to check it out. He got right back to us. He goes, I'd love to work with you guys.
Wow.
Period. I mean, no strings or nothing.
Yeah.
Send me some stuff. I want to start mixing. So we're like, wow. So he did the Black Abyss album. And then we have another record that's already done, but because of the COVID, we decided to kind of put it off for a little bit. And we're now releasing it. We just released our first single at the beginning of the year. I Am the Dark, which is called. But we have a whole record that's done that he's also working on, and he's going to be mixing that. And the album will be called Nectophilia, which is actually a cool thing. I had to look it up. I was like, what does that mean?
I don't want that in my browser history.
So here it is. It's someone that feels comfortable in the dark. Like they find comfort in the dark, which I didn't know was a thing, but I guess people sit there, turn all the lights off, and they'll just sit there all night and they're just happy as a clam. And, but basically the record has some, Tim at the time had dealt with some big blows. His father had passed away, as well as his younger brother, very unexpectedly. So we were in the middle of writing this record, and the lyrics and everything else. It was, it definitely, I don't want to say darker record, but it was very much reminiscing on some of these painful moments. And I think of the name because it kind of came out. I forgot who came up with it. If it was Jeremy, our guitarist, or if it was Tim. But yeah, I'm looking it up, and I was like, man, that's right on. Okay. I had no idea what it meant, but then after that, I was just like, perfect. So yeah, we're real excited about that record and getting out to support it. We've been off the road for like 2.5 years. Once again, the COVID thing. So we just kind of focused on the beer drinkers. We also have another band, the Lost Crows, which is a Black Crowes tribute that we do as well. Keeps us busy. And then I do a Chris Stapleton thing. I mean, way too many bands, let me tell you.
Way too many. You sound like
man, that's a lot.
Yeah, 4 bands, man. And then people are like, hey, can you come over this weekend? I'm like, no.
A side project has a date this weekend. Sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it keeps me busy, that's for sure.
Where is the best place for people to support Watchers and buy your albums?
So I would say Facebook. I mean, basically because we're lazy.
Well, you're busy playing music.
No, that's easily searchable. Let's say easily searchable.
Facebook, right? So it just makes it easy. That would be probably the best spot. We have a show coming up. And I have it written down. Let's see. Saturday, June 25th. We'll be at Vinny's in Concord.
Nice.
With our good buddy Craig Macicero and his band Dress the Dead. They'll be playing. We're going to do like a co-headline thing, and that material off the new record that's not released yet. So yeah, anybody out there wants to come out and rock? June 25th. That's the day.
Nice.
There'll be watchers. We also have some Beer Drinker Hellraiser shows coming up. Not this weekend, but next weekend at the Retro Junkie in Walnut Creek. Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers.
That's the old WPLJ.
Yes. And then a friend of ours,
newly revamped, and it's great in there. So that'd be a great place for the local folks.
We played there. Enrico, the owner, awesome guy, takes care of us. We've played there, I'd say, at least a half dozen times. And always.
What's the date on that show?
That date is Saturday, April 9th.
All right.
So it's coming up, not this weekend, next. And then we're playing a couple biker rallies, the Street Vibrations, Club Fox in Redwood City, May 14th. So yeah, we've got a lot on the plate.
Hey, Pete, if you're up in town on April 9th, that's, day after my wife's birthday, but she's going to be in Arizona. So I'm going to have a bachelor weekend. That's a good time to go see Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers.
Yeah. I want to get them down south. Bastards Canteen, make some money and have a good time.
Yeah, we played the Canyon down in a few places down in LA last month. They were actually really cool. I don't know if you're familiar with that venue, but it's like at the mall, right? So we show up and it's like next to Emporium Capwell's was like this, big, huge venue. And we're like, what the hell is this? The Canyon. And I guess there's a few of them sprinkled down in LA. But yeah, great venue. Place holds probably like 1,200 people, huge.
Wow.
A lot of fun. But yeah, we get down there every once in a while.
What else you got for us, John?
I'm going to shout out my gig coming up. We're playing with the Sun Kings. My band Uncommonwealth is playing with the Sun Kings at Vino Godfather on June 12th. That's a Sunday. So come out. It's an outdoor show. It's a winery, so you can plan on wine drinking and a little hell raising. Oh, and we'll be also at Luga here in town on April 22nd. Yeah, right. Cheese eating and wine drinking. Right. No, they usually park a taco truck out there, so it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, it's the same thing. They do the same thing out there at Retro Junkie. They'll bring out the roach coach, the lobster rolls or whatever, and always a good time.
Yeah. It's a good time. Yeah. So man, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in at least one or both of those shows coming up. That'll be fun. And, thanks for doing this with us, man. This is a blast.
No, I appreciate it, man. And like I said, it's good to see some familiar faces from way back, from biology class, right?
Yeah, that's right. 1983. Yeah. That's awesome.
Man.
Yeah.
I really do cherish those days in Benicia, though, man. It really is. I look back fondly on those days. And we're really lucky to have grown up in such a great little town.
Yeah.
Actually getting outside of it, and you start to realize, like, man, not everywhere is as cool as Benicia was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to Kurt Dunaway, Brian Whitney,
fellow drummer, my whole boy.
Yeah.
Other familiar. Kurt,
I'm going to roll this thing and wrap this up. Stand by.